So have you ever sat around and wondered what would happen if you stuck Super Mario 64 and Banjo Kazooie back to back with duct tape? Well, a ROM hacker from Germany has actually answered that question with Super Banjo Kazooie 64. So when you start a new file, you'll notice that you're just outside Peach's castle, but some things are a bit strange, as the signpost appears to have Bottle's face slapped on it, and that big picture of Princess Peach on the front of the castle is now a golden crocodile instead. Now, if you haven't already guessed it, this game is basically every level in Banjo Kazooie, except you play as Mario, naturally. So there's Spiral Mountain, Mumbo's Mountain, Treasure Trove Cove, Clanker's Cavern, Bubble Gloop Swamp, Frizzy Peak, Gobi's Valley, Mad Monster Mansion, and Rusty Bucket Bay. Unfortunately, there's no Click Clock Wood, but that's because the game is actually still in its beta form, so it's not really complete. You're gonna want to keep that in mind. In fact, just while we're in Rusty Bucket Bay, I'd like to show you a stupid glitch that happened while I was playing. Now in this version of Rusty Bucket Bay, the water is solid, allowing Mario to walk on it. Now that was weird enough, but then this happened. Watch. That's right. Mario launches himself out of a cannon and then falls through otherwise solid water. Classic. Probably the worst level for weird glitches like this is Clanker's Cavern. Too often will I be swimming around trying to figure out where the hell to go, only to be stopped by an invisible object. And I just want to go on record by saying the water is the worst possible place to have this problem, because if you get stuck in the wrong place, you could drown. And while we're in Clanker's Cavern, I'd like to show you all what I believe to be the biggest middle finger of any video game glitch I have ever seen. Check this out. Nope, you're not imagining it, folks. Mario is officially stuck, and there's nothing I can do. You can't even pause and exit the level because the game won't let you leave unless you're standing completely still. You have no choice but to reset. Speaking of middle finger glitches, see what happens when I enter the wall in the mirror room. Yep, it just kicks you to the curb, like get out of my castle, you fucking bum. It doesn't happen every time though. The one time I was actually taken to the Giant's Lair, which is a level that was supposed to be in the original Banjo Kazooie but was never finished. The person who made this ROM hack clearly knows Banjo Kazooie well. Okay, now what's this? I'm stuck again? You gotta be kidding me. Well, at least I managed to get out this time. Now so far, I've mostly been talking shit about the levels, but what you may be wondering is, are there any good ones? Well actually yeah, there are. Spiral Mountain is a really good level. It works, it's functional, and there are actually enemies and items all over the place. Oh, and if you haven't noticed yet, yes, they replaced the coins with notes. The same can be said about Mumbo's Mountain, but the rest of the levels, they need work. But as I said before, it is still in beta, so maybe the maker will finish it sometime. Now let's discuss the graphics for a second. Now as expected, all the textures are basically imported from Banjo Kazooie, and for the most part they actually seem to work fairly well. Occasionally you'll get some textures that don't fit the object, or ones that just don't mesh well with others, but for the most part it stays true to the original game. The same can be said about the music department. For example, listen to the Gobi's Valley theme. Now that was an example of a good one. The Treasure Trove Cove theme, on the other hand, is done terribly. To be fair, it's probably some glitch causing the instruments to desynchronize, but still, it sounds like two people are grappling for control over the same piano. And those two people are AVGN and Angry Grandpa. Oh, and by the way, invisible wall. Yep. Well, that basically wraps up Super Banjo Kazooie 64. But when it comes to talking about Banjo Kazooie, How on earth could we forget its brilliant sequel, Banjo Tooie? This game is phenomenal. It took everything great about Banjo Kazooie and multiplied it several times over. With massive levels, better graphics, and all new moves. This game is amazing, and may actually be my personal favorite game on the N64, if not in fucking general. Of course, there's a nostalgia factor to that, but still. Now with all that, you'd think it only makes sense for the person who made the Super Banjo Kazooie 64 ROM hack to make one for Banjo Tooie as well. And sure enough, that mentality brought to us Super Banjo Tooie 64. And yes, it was made by the same person. Wait, play as Ballbuster? Who the fuck is Ballbuster? What the fuck is that? And what is it doing in a Mario 64 ROM hack? Alright, fuck that shit, I'm playing as Mario. So, if you go through here, the game gives you a bunch of cheat options. But I think it's a bit early in the game to start thinking about that. So as I'm sure you figured out by now, just like Super Banjo Kazooie 64, just like Super Donkey Kong 64, this game is basically every Banjo Tooie level except you play as Mario. So that means Mayhem Temple, Glitter Gulch Mine, Witchy World, Jolly Rogers Lagoon, Pterodactyl Land, Grunty Industries, Hailfire Peaks, and Cloud Cuckoo Land. Now you may be wondering why it is that this game appears to be much more complete than Super Banjo Kazooie 64. Well, get this, the game is actually finished. If I'm not mistaken, the person who made this one, his name's UED by the way, he's on YouTube, made the Banjo Tooie one before the Banjo Kazooie one. So I guess like me, he seems to think that Tooie is better, so he made that one first. Despite being finished, however, it is not perfect. Check out what happened in the mine. And Mario is stuck yet again. And while we're in Glitter Gulch Mine, it may be a good time to bring up the translation issue. For the most part, the ROM I have is completely translated into English, but when you defeat King Babam, he starts speaking German. Aber glaubt ja nicht, dass mein Sklaven in dieser Mine noch ihr Erfurt. I don't speak German. It's pretty obvious. Dear Germany, I'd like to apologize from the bottom of my heart for butchering your language. I ask that every German person in history find it in their heart to forgive me. Even Hitler. On the topic of translation, when you get a 100 coin star, when it asks you if you want to save, instead of giving you the options of yes or no, it's either ja or nein, 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 nein. Alright, I'm done with the Hitler shit, okay? Getting back to the topic of stupid glitches, check this shit out. I just can't get over that. He went straight through it like it was air. Then there are some levels that are just disappointing, like Jolly Rogers Lagoon. In the original game, there was this massive underwater section that made up 80% of the level. In here, however, that section is entirely gone. Now I know I complain about water levels a lot, but if you're removing more than half the level, then you've gone too far. Also, this asshole takes like 10 years to make his way around the pond. Seriously, I could have finished and uploaded this video by the time this guy came around. Alright, he's not that slow, I just hate waiting. But while I'm nitpicking, I just want to mention that the moon jump hack that I used in Mario 74 doesn't seem to work in this one. If you try it, Mario just seems to get stuck in the air. Before I get to the positive stuff, I just want to mention, the invisible walls make a comeback. Alright, so regarding the graphics, basically what I said about the graphics for Super Banjo Kazooie 64 still holds true for this one too. The textures are imported directly from Tooie and they look pretty good for the most part, but they don't always mesh very well and they can sometimes look sloppy or misplaced. Now look at this, I'm stuck again. Yeah, I know I was just talking about graphics, but it seems like every time I re-watch a clip I find another glitch. But yes, on the topic of graphics, the game does pretty well for itself. It's not spectacular, but it certainly looks better than the cartoony graphics from the original Super Mario 64. Also, the soundtrack is pretty good too. As expected, the music is based on the music from Banjo Tooie, and it sounds pretty good. And even better than that, just like in Banjo Tooie, the music sometimes changes depending on what part of the level you're in. The best example is Grunty Industries. Listen to how the music sounds inside the building. versus outside the building. I just want to say, that was always one of my favorite parts of the old Banjo games, was how the music changed to suit the level. So it's a pretty cool thing that they got that to work for this ROM hack. So what's the verdict on Super Banjo Kazooie and Tooie 64? Well, as far as Super Banjo Kazooie 64 is concerned, I would wait until it's completely finished before playing that one. It's a bit too unstable and unlively at this point. Super Banjo Tooie 64, on the other hand, is not quite as unstable and has much more to do. It has its flaws, of course, but a game without flaws is impossible to find or make. But this game doesn't have nearly as many as Super Banjo Kazooie 64. But in the end, the only real major selling point for either of the games is just the fact that you're playing as Mario in Banjo Kazooie / Tooie Land. So if you're a big fan of Banjo, then that might be enough for you. Otherwise, don't set your hopes too high. Anyways, I've been working on this video for hours and my head hurts like shit, so I'm just gonna go to sleep for like 7 years. That said, this has been another game review by Phantom Bane. Thanks for watching and have a good day, everyone.